सुन्वन्ति दिव्यै सवैः वैदैः साङ्गपदः क्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगा ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः।
ॐ नारायणः परो व्यक्तात् अण्डमव्ययसम्भवम् अण्डस्यान्तस्त्विमे लोकाः सप्तद्वीपा च मेदिनी ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। We are in the middle of a discussion of how the Bhagavad Gita gets away with repeating itself again and again and again, when the question of repetition is something which is very fraught in the Shastra itself, because for something to be studied, it should not keep on having this fallacy of redundancy. But yet, if we examine the gist of verses 20 to 24, we find that there is a lot of repetition. This way, that way, this way, that way, everything. So Adi Shankara takes upon himself to talk about why this repetition is not only valid but actually needed to make for ease of understanding. Why this is needed. This is exactly, this is how the thing proceeds. Why this is needed? If it is needed, then it should be needed for a certain reason. And what is the reason why it is needed? And this is what he says. And the first argument he makes is that there is a difference between the teaching situation and and an article or a piece of writing. So if you're writing, you don't if it's a piece of writing, then you don't condescend to the or patronize the reader, and you don't deal with them as though they are non-thinking people, and then you keep on talking down to them. Do this, do that, but don't do this, don't do that. You know why it is like this? It is because of that. Then that is annoying. And that is where we have this punarukti dosha. Punarukti means redundancy. But then, as Adi Shankara points out, this is a teaching situation. And what happens in the teaching situation, especially with something called Atma, which you cannot describe, which is not objectifiable. And at the same time, it is self-evident. It is you, but then you cannot describe it, you cannot talk about it, you cannot infer it. It's not available for any means of knowledge. And so this is the Atma. And then so now, how are you going to, how are you going to talk about it? And also, the second reason, this leads us to the second reason that Adi Shankara is going to talk about, is that we have to also look at the audience. The audience are lay people, he says, who have not had instruction in this matter, and who take the I as the body mind sense complex And as as every single challenge that befalls their way, they say, oh, I am affected, I have these afflictions. If the body is hurting, I am hurting, because the orientation of identifying with everything finite is so strong. And to remove that orientation, repetition is definitely needed. Takes us back to kindergarten. A for apple, B for ball. This is how one one learns by repetition. Two two ones are two, two twos are four. How many times you have to repeat that? And before it sits, and before it also makes sense, first the children just repeat, and then at some point, oh, this is what it means, and it's a discovery. And so like this, so for this discovery to be made, it is exactly like what is this, Vedanta kindergarten, Vedanta kg. And Vedanta kg also needs a certain amount of repetition, because because there is the reason is different. There, we have in the first instance, in the illustration of a real kindergarten, we have children whose minds are all over the place and who are being exposed to absolutely new material they have never encountered. Here also, in that sense, it is similar. Here also we are studying, and people are being exposed to new material for which they have not had exposure before, to which they have not had exposure before. Okay, so that's where the similarity ends. It's here, there the children have non-understanding, and here the adults here, they not only have non-understanding, but they also have built up their own ideas of what the Atma is. Atma must be this. Oh, I can't see it, it must not exist. And they say that with a straight face, even though they exist and the Atma is talked about as I. And this is one kind of a opinion about the Atma without knowing the Atma, coming to certain surmises and conjectures. And then another opinion is Atma is dot dot dot. What could it be? Oh, it's just a some kind of a flicker. Well, if it is a flicker, then it's a series of flickers. If it's a series of flickers, you have to understand deeply what that means. Series of flickers means what we have to understand. And if that understanding is not there, one goes away with thinking that there is no continuity. But there is continuity, because you can show a photo of yourself at age 2 and say, this is me. How do you say that? And then how does one flicker communicate with the next flicker? There must be some way before the flicker goes and dies away, and another flicker comes. What happens in between? All these things have to be thought out. We can't just conclude without really understanding what this flicker is all about. Where did this come from? All these things. And so that's another kind of a contention. And then another kind of, any opinion you have about the Atma, about oneself, as which is it will naturally, any opinion that you have will naturally be vitiated by your own ideology, your notions, your socialization, because it also how you grew up and in what kind of a family. And then sometimes we take on the familial understandings or non-understandings of the Atma as well. That's like a legacy that comes across. And so there is so much going on here, and then all this has to be unpacked. And so the repetition from various angles, repeating the same things with new words and new angles, hopefully wears away the resistance. I mean, that's not a problem. That we have opinions is not a problem. That we cling on to the opinions is the problem, without really being able to be open to what is being said. That is the problem. So, to wear away the resistance, to wear away the clinging, and in fact, the Upanishad, neither the Upanishad nor the Bhagavad Gita, tells you an opinion about the Atma. It's not one more opinion, along with the 500 other opinions that are there. In fact, what the teaching does is wear out the non-understanding and the wrong understanding, leading to wrong identification, and the Atma being itself Satchidananda, itself the source of all existence, and itself free of sorrow, has the space to shine as itself. So basically, the Upanishad is just a duster, a feather duster that comes and goes into the corners of the inner instrument, the mind, buddhi, etc., and very gently dusts off the cobwebs, dusts off the cobwebs of wrong understanding, and then suddenly one feels there is a lot of inner space. Suddenly one feels, one experiences that there is so much space. One can be accommodative without being taken over. One can be compassionate without feeling exploited. One can be happy without looking over the shoulder and seeing if some shadow is going to come tomorrow and swallow up this happiness. One can do that. There is suddenly a lot of space. Did the Upanishad make the space? Did the Upanishad put all this there, the accommodation and the compassion? No. Did the Bhagavad Gita put it there? No. It was already there. Along with this, this means that which one wants to be. Always compassionate, always kind, always loving, always open. Along with that was also a lot of debris from lifetime after a lifetime after a lifetime of internalizing wrong identifications. And so there is that debris. And the Upanishad is just a cleaning crew. It's just a cleaning crew which goes in and, goes in and spiffs up the place. Put some Windex maybe in the vision, cleans it up, and puts some, takes a feather duster, sweeps away wrong understanding, mops up the mistakes of several lifetimes, and then when it is pick and span, and and puts one on on the lifestyle of karma yoga, being able to serve and being able to put the world and the people ahead of oneself. And that kind of a practice, a lifestyle of living in conducively to gaining this knowledge, or to understanding this knowledge, the two together, yoga shastra, the teaching of how to live in the day to day, to accelerate this teaching, this understanding, and the teaching itself together, they form this cleaning crew. So, what does Karma Yoga do? Karma Yoga means dedicating one's life to duty and service and to Swadharma, and what needs to be done, and to also Samanya Dharma, what is correct, what is right, Vishesha Dharma, what is appropriate. And so, when one puts oneself on this diet of Dharma, then all the Raga and Dvesha, the strong preferences and prejudices, they sit down. They are suspended from acting. They do not factor into the action. And then, as one is growing in this way, one lets go of clinging to the result of action and trying to produce the result of action. So, the teaching and the lifestyle together, they remove this debris so that you discover yourself as what you already want to be. You are what you want to be. The seeker is the sought. I mean, however many ways you say it, it is the same. Whatever you want to be, you find you are. You find that there is a skip in the step. There is a little dance in the smile. There is a little bit of space. And even if there is a person who is very annoying, you're able to smile at them. And in fact, even when you were annoyed back at them, you wanted to smile at them. But somehow there was something in the way. This is not some kind of a doctrine. There is no doctrine of the Bhagavad Gita. There is no doctrine. And there is no doctoring of anything either. All that is there is you as you want to be, which is eclipsed by the Rahu and Ketu, means the shadow side of all the things that have come in the way because of the wrong understanding of this I. And so therefore he says this is not really a repetition, because this repetition is so much needed. And if it is not done, then it becomes extremely difficult for people to understand. And so he says this is not paunaruktihi. Paunaruktihi means this repetition. This is not repetition. And why is this not repetition? Because, and I'll read a little bit of it. I just lost the page here. Here it is. Here, so it's not repetition. He says the etesham shlokanam paunaruktyam chodaniyam. One must not go away of thinking that this is just repetition, or I should just switch off and think of other things because I've already been here and done this and understood this. Please don't do that, he says. He gives a little caveat because he says tatra yadeva atma vishayam kinchit uchyate tad etasmat shlokarthad na atirichyate kinchit shabdah punaruktam kinchit arthah iti. So, because he says from verses 20 to 26, 27, you will find that there are many words that you recognize here and there, whose purport you know. There are many sentences you understand, and all this being the case, this is, so don't think of it. Don't think of it as a repetition. Don't take it for granted. Don't become complacent and switch off. Why? Durbodhatvat. Because Atmavastunah durbodhatvat. Durbodhatvat means because the Atma, this thing, this Vastu means thing, this entity called the I, very difficult to understand. Very difficult to understand, and therefore tasmat what punah prasangam apadya shabdantarena tadeva vastu nirupayati bhagavan vasudevah. So therefore Bhagavan Krishna, Lord Krishna, keeps on bringing the same situations to bear, and using different words brings across the same points repeatedly. And then Kathannu Nama Samsarinam Avyaktam Tattvam Buddhi Gocharatam Apannam Sat Samsara Nivrittaye Syat Iti. So why does Lord Krishna do this in the teaching? Adi Shankara says, so that this, he does it with the idea, how on earth can I teach these samsaris? Samsaris means, the ones who have the sum total of all kinds of sorry experience. Samsaris, meaning the ones who are steeped in the wrong identification of the I as the body, as one's possessions, as one's children, as one's spouse. So the I is splintered, fragmented, and given away to all the things that one wants. All the locus of one's expectations, the loci of one's expectations, wherever they are, they get a little piece of the I. The I is given away because the I is not understood. The I is given away, as it were, to various objects of desire. And of course, the objects of desire, even if they are individuals, they are not going to behave according to how you want them to behave. Even the dog sits because you have a treat in the hand. Otherwise, it's very intelligent. It's not going to sit. You say sit, it will look anxiously at the hand. Oh, okay, there is my treat. Okay, and it knows. Unless I sit, I will not get this. If the hands are empty, it will just shake a leg and go away. It will say, what is this? Why are you making me do these antics? And so this is how it is. And so therefore, the idea of the Bhagavad Gita is to communicate the incommunicable, so to speak. The incommunicable I is magically communicated using timeless and ancient pedagogical tools. This is like a deep cleaning. So you don't just need the vacuum cleaner, you need various attachments. Why do you need various attachments? To show that one is free of attachments. So you need all these attachments, and then you go in and take the brush, take some kind of a suction tool, this tool, that tool. So those are all various pedagogical tools, like avasthatraya prakriya, one of the tools. And what is this avasthatraya prakriya? The pedagogy of which shows the continuity of the I, the same in all three states of universal experience: sleeping, dreaming, waking. This is called avasthatraya prakriya, a very fantastic tool to understand that I in here, all these states, I am not any particular state. I'm free of being the sleeper. I bless the sleeper with my presence, and then in hindsight, therefore, I can say I slept well. And then I am blessing the waker right now, provided one is awake, we can say that. Okay, yeah. So I bless the waker with my presence. That's why I can say I am awake. And so then I am the dreamer, also I can say, because I bless with my consciousness, with my presence. I sustain the dreamer, I sustain the waker, I sustain the sleeper. And so I cannot be any one of them. I am that who is the observer of the sleeping, waking, dreaming states. But the difficulties or the pleasures of these states do not really touch me. I simply am. And I happen to be sleeping right now. I happen to be awake right now. My home is neither in the sleeping state, nor in the waking state, nor in the dreaming state. My home is Om. It is with me. Om means everything. It is myself. My home is with myself. I am complete, I am free, I am life without boundaries. I am everywhere and everything. Nothing is separate from me. And even though I may count hundreds of people around me, the I in me and the I in all of them is one and the same. How to communicate this? That's why we need various pedagogies. That's why we need repetition. That's why the same thing has to be studied from various angles at different times, again and again. And so the only objective of the Bhagavad Gita is nirupanam, unfoldment of this Atma Vastu, this Atma Tattva, the truth of the I, which is, which should be internalized in order for samsara to end. In fact, there is no samsara. Samsara, as I said earlier, it's between the temples. Samsara is where samsara is recognized. Samsara is samsara vartate. Samsara is there where? Wherever it is recognized, it's there in one's buddhi. So, a person of knowledge, self knowledge, and a person without self knowledge can see the same thing and come to entirely different conclusions. The person without self knowledge can see it as targeting oneself from a very subjective, fearful, tearful standpoint. Whereas the person of knowledge, even if whatever they are encountering, it is causing them pain, causing them pain, they will say, okay, this is just causing the body the pain. The body is, I am the body, but the body is not the sum total of who I am. Body is me, but I am not the body. Oh, it's causing pain to the mind. Oh, let's see why. The mind also is an object of my awareness, of my observation. So, the best thing to say about it is never mind. And that is basically what it is. And so, like this, there is a stark difference between the quality of life that the knower of the self enjoys and the quality of life the non-knower, suffers from. You can't really say enjoys. And so, therefore, this repetition is valid. And besides, this is not what is said in the Bhashya, but there is a, in the fourth pada of the Brahma Sutra, the first sutra there is, in the fourth chapter, is that Avrittihi asakrit upadeshat. Avrittihi means repetition. Repetition, asakrit, avritti, repeated listening is necessary. Why? Because the scriptures are instructional in nature. They are not articles, they are not some kind of a thesis or essay. They are, the scriptures are trying to teach you something. Therefore, it is very, very needed. Okay, then next one, verse number 25. अव्यक्तोऽयमचिन्त्योऽयम् अविकार्योऽयमुच्यते तस्मादेवं विदित्वैनं नानुशोचितुम् अर्हसि. This refrain, na anushochitum arhasi, the last word in this is going to come there in the next in the couple of verses, and it means shochitum arhasi. You do not deserve to grieve. You are not qualified to grieve. Na anushochitum arhasi. You're not qualified to grieve over somebody dying. I mean, this looks like a harsh thing to say, and it is there in the manner book, etiquette 101, of what not to say it to somebody suffering a loss. So this is what is said. If somebody has suffered a loss, don't go to them and say, what? Oh, you should not cry. Why are you crying? That's the worst thing to do. But then Lord Krishna is getting away with this. How? Because he's not consoling, he's teaching. That's the difference. So if you're teaching, you can get away with a lot of things. And so this is also one more thing, because here it's not on the level of consolation. It's not on the level of etiquette 101, how to, what are the 10 things you should not say to somebody who has suffered a loss. People write about this all the time. You should say, yes, it is difficult. You should say, yes, I understand how you feel. If you can empathize, you can say that. And this will, but don't say things like, oh, come on, you were not even that close to your parents. Why are you grieving? They were old. They should have gone long ago. I don't know how they hung around for so long. All these things you must not say. And neither should you say, don't grieve. You don't deserve to be grieving. You were not even around them, and you had separated from them for a long time. So why are you sad? These are all these points comprise a list that one must not be operating from, an etiquette list. And there is etiquette everywhere. Even on the email and text, there is etiquette, except there it is called netiquette because it's on the net. And so whether we are talking of etiquette or netiquette, this is not etiquette to being permissive and doing whatever one wants. Not an option. But this one, Lord Krishna gets away with it because he is talking about a fact. He's talking about a fact of the teaching. He's talking about the tenets, knowing which one is freed of grief. So, since one is naturally freed of grief, Lord Krishna here, or the Bhagavad Gita in general, cannot think of any situation where grief is warranted. Because the I is naturally free of grief. Oh, you're taking your grief away from me. How can you do that? How can you be so cruel that you're taking away my grief? Nobody really says that. Even if you feel a sense of outrage that the grief is being taken away, nobody laments the grief being taken away. And so, how do you get to the place from a identification with a always grieving I to a non-grieving I? What is that leap? It seems bigger than the leap that Lord Hanuman took from the tip of India to Sri Lanka. It seems like a big quantum leap. How do I get from the grieving I to the non grieving I? Set the grieving I aside. Are you able to observe the grief? Yes. Oh, that's already a little bit of space. If you're able to observe the grief, this is wonderful. That means we can safely apply the maxim that whatever you observe is not you. So this is Vedanta 101. Because if it is you, you cannot observe you because you are you. The I is not an object. And so any object that you observe is not I. So the grief, even though it looks like it is overwhelming, overpowering you, it is not you. Simple. And so if it is not you, then here this is exactly what the point is. Then you are not subject to grief. This is the point number 2. And then the nature of the I being avyakta, unmanifest, meaning it's not manifest as a being that you can click a selfie with or you can objectify in some ways. Avyakta means it is not objectifiable at all. Oh, if it is not objectifiable, perhaps I can infer it. No, achintyaha ayam. Achintyaha means it is not an object of inference. Oh, then what is it? It is the content, the nature, the swarupa of the inferer. It is the truth of the one who infers. So the truth of the one who infers cannot be an object of inference, cannot be an object of conjecture, cannot be an object of some kind of belief. Because we are talking of the truth of the conjecturer, we are talking of the truth of the one who believes, the believer. And so, therefore, this is achintya, not available for the means of knowledge called inference. That takes away a lot of things, because then one sees that one was keeping on, churning the in the head, letting the churning go on and on in the head without coming to any possible conclusion, because the I is doesn't have a body, is not cannot be put on the weighing scale and measured, cannot be, you cannot even conclude certain things about things that are subtle, like space. You can observe space in a very subtle way. You can observe air, but you cannot observe the I as an object. Oh, then how am I going to know it? Because in using these means of knowledge only, I come to know this is pot. How do I know? By sight, by touch, by even smell, because the smell of the pot has a distinct earthen smell. So I can use 3 means of knowledge to do this. Or I can even use the ears. If I am in one room and I have kept the pot in the other room, and then a gust of wind, there is a crashing sound, and a particular kind of a crashing sound, like when something made of earthenware falls to the ground, a muffled crashing sound. Then I can infer with this. I can infer, I heard the sound, but I think it is the pot. But here, it's not an object of your mind, it's not an object of your inference, it's not an object, period, it is you. And so it is not subject to not only inference, but any means of knowledge that you wield. And therefore, it is taught. It is taught because it is self-evident. So you don't need to know it as an object. That is the first teaching, is that it is not going to be taught by something outside of you. Even the teaching is outside of you, but it's not going to be taught, because it need not be taught in that way, because you happen to be self-evident. That's why I keep asking the question tirelessly, are you here? What will you say? Let me think about it. Nobody says that. Yes, I am here. And how does that yes come from? That where does that yes come from? That yes, there's this unequivocal and confident and completely sure of oneself. One says yes. That means one knows. So the I, the existence of the I, is non separate from the knowledge of this I, which already one has. So then why are you keeping on talking and teaching this? Because that knowledge is partial in nature. It is not whole. Up till here the knowledge ends. That I am is not subject to confusion, is not subject to options. I know I am. But please do not ask the next question, who are you, what are you? Because that I do not know, therefore I have made a mistake centered on the I. I am is evident and then self evident, and then I am, then you can add many things. I am a man, I am a woman, I am poor, I am rich, I am unloved, I am crazy. All these things, whatever you add to the I am, is a conclusion based on wrong understanding of the I. What if I add I am Satchidananda? That is okay. That's the only thing that is correct. The rest of it is wrong identification. How can you sit here and say that is correct? Because that's what you want to be. You want to be free. You want to be happy. And you want to be, yeah, you want to be all pervasive. You want to matter. You want to be loved. You want to be needed. All these things exactly, it is in keeping with the human quest. It's in keeping with the human quest. That's why we say, thank God this knowledge is there, so that at least it is answering my yearning. It's answering the yearning of all the jivas from time immemorial. That's why Bhagavad Gita and other texts are, are not bound by time. The examples may vary, but the truths are unvarying truths, completely unvarying truths. And so, therefore, avyaktam means unmanifest, achintyam, not available to any means of knowledge that you operate. And then avikaryam. Avikaryam means it is impossible. It is absolutely impossible to change it. It is unchanging, not subject to modification. Because if something is subject to modification, you can recognize it. Oh, this was milk, which is now yogurt. You can tell that. That was milk, which is now yogurt. T.S. Eliot once said, in The Wasteland, talking about a person who is as good as dead, deadened by the modern ways of living, etc. Those are pearls that were his eyes. So it's like that. So here too it's similar. That was milk, which is now yogurt. That was Atma, which is now a samsari. Can you say that? Never. Never. Because it is avikarya. It does not undergo a change. But then who is this samsari? You answer the question. Why should I answer the question all the time? You tell me who is the samsari. I think it is me. Well, who is this me? The one that is crying over the body. Why are you crying over the body? Because it is getting weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. I am weaker and weaker and weaker. No. And you are not. You are the observer of weakness. You are not the weakness. This is what has to be understood. You are not the weakness. You are the observer of weakness. And same thing when we say things, we say things without really understanding it. I am lame. No, you are not. The eye is not lame. Why? Because the eye doesn't have legs. Therefore, it is impossible for it to be lame. It's just not possible. It doesn't have any body parts. It doesn't have parts. That's why we studied this earlier. That's why it is not subject to destruction, because that which has parts alone can be destroyed. So it doesn't have legs. And then, so similarly, if one says, I am deaf, well, It doesn't have ears, thank God. Thank God the Atma cannot be deaf because it doesn't have ears. I am blind. Well, same thing. It doesn't have eyes. It doesn't have ears. So then what do you mean when you say I am blind? The I am has gone and deeply misidentifies itself with a sense organ or the lack thereof known as ears or eyes. This is what it is. And that's why in the shlokas that we chant in the beginning, there is a very nice verse. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamaham vande paramananda madhavam. Mukam, the one who is mute, karoti, this knowledge, this Bhagavad Gita, these are verses that eulogize the Bhagavad Gita. Mukam karoti. The karoti makes. The Bhagavad Gita makes the person who is lame scale a mountain. Oh, that's fantastic. And that's one more reason to study the Gita, because I'll have miracles in my life. So if I was not able to walk, I will start walking. That is not the idea. So, mukam karoti vachalam, the one who is mute is made to speak. Pangum langhayate girim, the one who is lame scales a mountain. Yat kripa, by whose grace, that Lord Krishna I invoke. That Bhagavad Gita, the author who is the Lord Krishna, really I invoke. Yat kripatamaham vande. I surrender. I salute the Bhagavad Gita. I salute Lord Krishna for giving this understanding, because this is not to be taken literally. Fine, if there is a miracle, I'll take it any day, no problem. But that is not the full purport of this verse. The full purport of this verse is that, how is it that the mute can suddenly speak? Because the mute has stopped identifying with oneself as I cannot speak. And so the speaking here and the non speaking really doesn't matter, because the limitations of not speaking and the limitations associated with being a mute person are taken away. Similarly, the limitations associated with somebody who is on crutches are taken away. It's not that the crutches are gone, but I am depending on the crutches of this dependency, that I am weak and I cannot walk. Those crutches are gone. The crutches of depending upon this identification are gone. And similarly, if one cannot see, the vision of non duality takes away the division between the seer and the seen. That is what it is. And so, therefore, this is exactly in keeping with the yearning of for freedom in the human heart, and therefore it is said, avikaryam, it is not subject to modification. Tasmat, therefore, evam viditva enam. Knowing the enam here means this Atma. Knowing this Atma exactly as it is being taught, there is no place, there is no cause of grief. What is the reason for grief? No grief at all. And this is exactly how, he looks at it. Now the commentary. Avyaktah sarvakarana vishayatva sarvakarana avishayatvat. Avyaktah, it is not accessible to any means of knowledge. It is not subject to inference. It is not subject to sight. The eye cannot be, compared to anything else. Any means of knowledge that you have, it is not known through that way. Which means what? Is it unknowable? No, because it is already self-evident. I know I am. Navyajyate iti avyaktah. It is not accessible to any of the senses, and therefore it is unmanifest. Therefore it is not an object of thought. Achintyaha ayam. Yadhi indriya gocharam vastu tat chinta vishayam apadyate. So if there is a thing of perception, then only if it is available for perception, then only it becomes an object of thought. But the eye is inaccessible to the senses. Being inaccessible to the senses is unattainable or not possible to enclose it as an object of thought. It is neither thought, object of thought, nor it is the status of the thinker, nor is it a means of knowledge which brings thinker and thought together. And so, what is it? It is that awareness which upholds the thinker and the object of thought, the subject of thought, the object of thought, and the means of the thinking, without being any one of them. It is everything. It can be everything because it is no one thing in particular. Avikarya ayam. This is not subject to any kind of modifications. And he gives this example, yatha kshiram dadhi atanchanadina vikari na tatha ayam atma. Dadhi atanchana means like atanchana means some kind of a curdling effect through which the yogurt is made. So the milk is, no longer milk. It's broken up into solids and then whey, and then various bacteria act upon it and very healthy, good for health, and all these things. So it's all this operation of this bacteria which when activated, you put a little bit of starter in the a starter piece of yogurt in the milk, and then by the next morning it is completely become yogurt. So too the Atma in the today was liquid and tomorrow is solid. No such thing is possible. It is not available for any kind of change. No kind of change is it's available for, primarily because it is not subject to modification. It's not at all subject to modification. And why is it not subject to modification? Because what are you going to modify? It doesn't have any attributes, it doesn't have any parts, it doesn't have any limbs. What are you going to modify? It is never changing, ever the same. And this is what he says, Niravayavatvat cha avikriyah. It doesn't have body parts, so therefore it is not possible to constitute a change. Milk can change into yogurt or whey because it has certain parts. There is lactose and this, and various proteins are there, various kinds of sugars are there, and and bacteria is there, and that is what causes the breakdown. But here there is no such thing for the Atma. And this is what he explains. Nahi niravayavam vasta kinchid vikriyatmakam drishtam. In the world, we don't see anything to be changing, that which doesn't have parts. How many things do we know in the world that which doesn't have parts? Tell me. Only one thing. What is that? Space. Space doesn't have parts, and we don't find it changing. No, of course it changes. Why? First it is space, and then you put 4 poles and 4 walls, then it becomes a large space. Then you divide that space into bedroom space, living room space, kitchen space, and bathroom space. See, space can be divided as though space is never divided. For your privacy, you say bathroom space, but it is not really, the space has not undergone any change to become bathroom. It is an as though division. That's, you want to close the door and be alone. That's why you say this is my room space, this is bedroom space. You want to be social and hang out with other people that are living in your house, and you go to the living room and then you call it living room space, social space. Space has no parts. And even though you call it by these names, space is space. And you know that, immediately. And unfortunately, we see this in the war-ridden country of Ukraine. You see all these pictures. What were apartment buildings is just now space. It's all gone, shelled, horrible. But it at the same time shows how how this is in that space can be divided is in our own, is a belief that's in our own heads. Space cannot be divided. Space can neither be bought nor sold, but still, that is what one does with an apartment. You pay for the space, especially if you're living in a flat. You don't pay for anything else except the space, because the land belongs to the cooperative which built the building. The land is shared by all, and you can't say you own the ceiling upstairs, because the ceiling upstairs is the floor of the fellow living up, and you cannot say you own the floor because that is the ceiling of the lady living downstairs, and so you don't own the outer walls, and then the inner walls maybe you own, but what is the inner walls? What are the inner walls? That's just space. You just own the space, really. And so therefore, nahi niravayavavam kinchid vikriyatmakam vastu drishtam. Nowhere is it seen that anything that is partless is subject to any kind of change, like space. Then further he concludes this by saying avikriyatvat avikaryah ayam atma. So avikriyatvat, owing to the changelessness of being the Atma. Changelessness is not a property or an attribute of the Atma. Because if it is the attribute, then what is the substantive? The substantive itself is changeless. So owing to that, it is not subject to any kind of change. Therefore, what? Tasmat, therefore, evam yathokta prakareణ enam atmanam viditva tvam na anushocitum arhasi hanta aham esham maya ete hanyate iti. Very nice conclusion. Tasmat, therefore, yathokta prakarena, in the manner that the I has been spoken of as above, enam atmanam, once you know the I, exactly when you internalize the understanding of this I, exactly in the manner that the Bhagavad Gita is unfolding it, then tvam na anushochitum arhasi. You don't have to, there is nothing to grieve over. And he gives some examples of this wrong thinking. Hanta aham, I am the killer in the battlefield. Arjuna grieving like this. Maya ete hanyate, all these warriors are going to be slain by me. This is not something to grieve over. But isn't it true that Arjuna is now getting ready to kill these people? Exactly true. Yes, he is getting ready to kill these people, but the grief, that is an objective fact, because we are talking of a war. And yes, he is getting ready to kill these people. Who are these people? We have talked about this at length in the beginning. They are tyrants and usurpers and dictators. They need to be removed, and he as a warrior sees it as his own duty to do this service for humanity. But then they are also related to him. That is why he is lamenting, because he has fought many wars, our Arjuna. If it was a war where he did not know the people, he would make short shrift of them and come back and have a big party also. Look how I just looked at him and he ran away. I didn't even need to shoot an arrow. He would say like this. But because there is heartstrings pulling where these people are concerned, and those strings have the word my written all of them, my uncle, my teacher, my cousins, my nephews, my grandfather. And it's the my there that is between him and the people that is causing the grief. And the my is a wrong identification. That possessive case, my, that sixth case, so in Sanskrit, the possessive, the genitive case, which is connecting him to the people, is coming from a sense of disconnection, not connection. It's coming from a disconnection, it's coming from a great disconnect of who he is, of who he is. Oh, but then if he were to have an epiphany right there in the battlefield, and if he were to say, all these people are just me, and I am not away separate from them, and I don't really need to fight this war because I have understood the nature of the I, then he can walk away. He can. But he's not there yet. He's not there. Then he can walk away, or he can fight, saying, this is my duty and I'll do it because it doesn't matter if I do it or no, don't do it. Those options are available to him. He is not caught as he thinks he is caught. He is not victimized as he thinks he is victimized. And this is a lesson to everybody, because many times when one feels caught in a certain situation, one feels victimized as though there are no options open. This is what feels extremely scary. This is what feels confining. This is where one feels extremely sorry for oneself, because the door for all the options seem to be gone. But this is, however, not an objective rendering of the situation. This is at best a subjective conclusion that one has made from previous experiences and hurts, especially as a child. As a child, one didn't have options. One did not know what to do. One could not think. One felt trapped. And so maybe that samskara is coming here, and one is feeling trapped. One is feeling confined. One is feeling victimized. And so this verse is a wonderful verse to take a couple of steps back and say, is the situation as optionless as it looks? The answer, if you're honest with yourself, will be no. Okay, then what are the options? Oh, don't let's not go there. Don't let's go there. Why not? Because those options are very, very scary. Aha. Now we are getting deeper into this situation. Very important conversation to have with oneself. So those options are scary. Why? Because somebody is going to be upset. And then for every answer, keep asking, then what will happen? If this happens, then what will happen? Okay, they are going to be upset. Then what will happen? Then they are not going to love me. Then you ask the question, do they love you now? Well, not particularly. Okay, then there is nothing to lose. That is that particular train of thought you can gently shut the door on. But then that may not be the only train of thought. Then there'll be other trains of thought. Oh, but if I don't do this, then there's something else. I'm caught between a rock and a difficult place. So if I don't do this, there'll be some consequences that are undesirable. But if I do this, then some other person or people will be hurt. So, is there a way you can do this without getting them getting hurt? Well, perhaps not. If that's the answer, if that's the objective answer, then you can look at what is hurt and how is this person. Why are you protective of this person? Why should this person, if you're telling the truth and somebody is hurt, is there a way you can tell it so that it is gentle? Or even if I'm gentle, it will hurt. Is there a need to say this? Yes, there is a need to say this because there have been all these transgressions. Okay, so you need to establish boundaries. Yes, but they will be upset and they will be hurt. Now, which is more important to you? Ask yourself this question. Is it important for you to establish a boundary at this time with this other person or people, or is it important to you to not hurt them? Well, I think I should not hurt them. Okay, then you're making a proactive decision. Even if it may not be in the best of your interests, you're making a proactive decision. You are choosing right now to not say anything for whatever reason. Then, if you have chosen, then you are no longer a victim of the circumstances. That is why this is a very important verse, because it gives some tools to get out of, to crawl out of what appear to be impossible and optionless situations in one's life. Exactly the kind of situation that Arjuna finds himself in. If I don't fight the war, everybody will be mad, and I will be called a derelict from duty. Even now, you can't run away. If once you've joined the army or air force, whatever, you're in the middle of combat. If you run away, then there is a lot of dishonor, and it's also a crime to run away from war like that. And so it's not an option. And so he feels kind of hemmed in on both sides. If I don't run away, then I have to kill these people. Somebody will be killed. It's a war. And if I run away, that is also wrong. And so, but it's not as optionless as it looks, because the option right now here, the only option, see, these victimized situations are very, very important, because they become the segue. They open the doorway to the knowledge of the I. Because Vedanta starts to look attractive only when all the options are closing down, closing down. Oh, let me try this one because everything else has been exhausted. Let me try this one. This is the last ray of hope. And my friends, it does not disappoint. It really does not disappoint. We just have to be, as long as one is open, it really does not disappoint. And so it is appropriate that it's the last ray of hope, because this is something coming from outside. It is not within myself. It's not, I can't control this knowledge. I just have to be open to it. I just have to sit and do nothing and listen. It is very difficult, very challenging, but if Arjuna can do it, everyone can do it. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः